Welcome to Hutchinson Economic Developments. My name is Miles Seppelt. I serve as the city's Economic Development Director. In this week's episode, we'll have our normal project updates for you. And then in the second segment, we're going to take a deep dive and look a little bit about the housing crisis, kind of lay that out a little bit. So, for the updates, Jorgensen Hotel, this project is moving forward, but like many things, it always seems to take a little bit longer than what you think. Originally, we thought this was going to be happening at the end of April, and right now, the last that I've heard is this has been pushed back to the first week of May. The reason is that the Minnesota Pollution Control Agency came in and inspected. They want a little bit more work done in there before they were going to be satisfied. So that has to get done. The demolition contractor's got to finish up the permit process, and then we're still waiting for this high reach excavator to come in. So probably first week of May, I think we're going to see activity, and probably by the time we get to the next episode, this could very well be underway. Just as a reminder, once this gets going, and there's going to be a piece of Washington Avenue that gets closed off, and then there'll be 2 lanes on Highway 15 that are going to get coned off. The whole site's going to be fenced off for safety, and then the alley behind the building will be closed for a while too. The project itself is going to take about a month or a month and a half, so hopefully this will be May, and then we're done by the middle of June. Another news item, in case you haven't heard, is that there is a Thai restaurant that's going to be coming in, and this is in the former Zella's location. I have not talked directly with the owners, but I did talk with the owner's representative, and they told me their plans. They're opening a restaurant in St. Cloud right now, and once that one gets up and running, they'll be down in Hutchinson to get this one open. So we're probably looking at maybe middle of the summer. And they did talk about, it'll be Thai food and potentially a sushi bar that would go with it. So it should be a pretty fun addition to the downtown. River House is doing some work on their building. So there's going to be siding that gets added on the south side there to help tidy that up. And then there's other pieces of this plan that I am not yet allowed to talk about. So just know there's more plans. The landing, that is moving ahead rapidly. The next major piece of this is that in May, a contractor will be on site to dig out the stormwater retention pond. That's in the upper left corner of the drawing there in front of you. And then at the same time, there will be some improvements to Glen Street. The old boat landing is going to get removed, and then new curb and gutter is going to be added to kind of round off that area and make it look a little bit more presentable. I did go out and take some pictures, not radically different than what I've shown you before. Probably the biggest item that's going on now is that they're really working more on the exterior of the building, and a lot of the stonework is getting done around the perimeter. So I don't have a picture of that directly, but it's underway now, and we should be seeing over the next 4, 6, 8 weeks pretty dramatic progress on the exterior building finishes. So that'll be exciting to see. And then the North Maple Apartments. This is on the old former Burns Manor site. This project is getting underway. So they have a contractor out on site. They removed all the trees that were there. Kind of hard to see, but that's progress, I guess. So the site's been cleared, and as soon as it dries out, I'm pretty sure the earth movers are going to be up there, and there'll be pretty substantial activity very shortly. Down in the Hutchinson shopping mall, there's a new retailer that's coming in. I cannot yet let the name out, but I can say it's more of a variety store. It's not specifically clothing or anything. It's more of a variety store. So it's going to be a really nice addition to the mall. And to the best of my knowledge, I think that'll be sometime this summer. And as soon as I'm allowed to share who it is, I will let you know. Dairy Queen is being remodeled inside and out. So that's making good progress. You can see in the left-hand picture, there's a kind of a tower getting built on the corner. and you can see what it's going to look like when it's the finished product on the right-hand side. So the tower will get put in. There's new signage coming, giant plastic spoon or whatever that is. So, you know, it'll look pretty neat when it's all done. So underway right now. Ridgewater College has a new president. So Dr. Cheryl Norman, and she's coming to us from Central Lakes College, where she serves as the Vice President of Academic and Student Affairs. Quite a process to identify the new Ridgewater president. I can tell you there were close to 50 applicants for the job nationwide, California to New York to Florida, all over the place. So Cheryl, she's hometown Minnesota person and well-versed with the Minnesota state system, so it'll be a pretty natural fit. So she'll be starting on the 1st of July. And then sometime thereafter, we're going to have an opportunity to interview her for this show. So we can look forward to that. Sherwin-Williams Paint Store is now open on the south end of town. This is just right across the street from Menards. So I think that's pretty much all I got to say about that. It's open. You can go there and buy paint. Guiding Light Early Learning Center, childcare, that's open and recruiting students. And so, or recruiting kids, I guess, for daycare. So I think there's still another 30 some odd slots available. So if you know of anybody that needs childcare, certainly give them a call. The phone number there is on the screen, and see what Guiding Light could do for you. And then lastly, at the Enterprise Center, we have a new company coming in. They're busy setting up shop out there right now. This is a laboratory testing company, and they test cannabis products. So 8 or 9 jobs initially, probably 24 jobs within a couple years. Different kind of job for Hutchinson than what we're normally used to. So microbiologists, chemists, lab technicians, things like that. So exciting to see, and this leaves the Enterprise Center 100% full. So we're happy about that. We've got 3 companies out there that we're gonna focus on growing up over the next couple years. So those are the updates. If you have any questions, certainly feel free to give me a call. I'd be happy to chat with you, answer any questions that you might have. Stay tuned for our next segment. We're going to take a look at the housing crisis and try to explain a little bit more about what's really going on there, what makes it a crisis, and where does Hutchinson stand, and so forth. So stay tuned for that. Welcome back to Hutchinson Economic Developments. My name is Miles Seppel, and I'm the Economic Development Director for the city. In this segment, we're going to take a deep dive and look a little bit into the housing crisis. We've all heard about this. You hear it talked about or you read about it, but you know, what really is it? What are we talking about? So in this segment, we're going to talk a little bit about, okay, when we say housing crisis, what do we really mean? So we'll dig into that a little bit, and then we're going to look at where Hutchinson stands and where McLeod County stands in all this. And then we'll try to take a little look at some of the contributing factors as to like, why is this happening? So we're just gonna dive right in. So first question is, when we say housing crisis, what do we really mean? What are we talking about? So, and really this is just where the supply of adequate housing, it just is not keeping up with demand, and it's just not at prices that people can reasonably afford. So a big slice of this is really affordability. And when we talk about affordability, it's, you know, what percentage of your family income is going toward housing. And a lot of what's happening is that wages are just not keeping up with the actual cost of housing. In the housing world, they talk about the 30% rule. That's what makes it affordable. And for a house, you know, whether it's an apartment that you rent or something you buy, where you're paying mortgage, you're paying property taxes, you're paying insurance, generally speaking, in order to be affordable, all of that should be 30% or less of your gross income. So whatever the top line number is that you're earning, 30% of that is what one would be expected fairly to spend on housing. The unhappy reality is that a lot of people are spending more than 30%, and that is a very tough situation. So One of the key aspects of the housing crisis is just this affordability piece, that it's just more expensive than what people can ordinarily be expected to pay or should be expected to pay. So affordability, that's a big slice of the housing crisis. Another key dimension is just the shortage of supply. There's just not enough out there relative to what the population is or the number of households in a community. And this is particularly acute in more rural places. So a lot of this is traced back to the fact that there's very limited new construction, and the housing stock that we have, it's aging and oftentimes kind of degrading a little bit. So it's not keeping up. So second dimension is just the supply of the housing. A third dimension of the housing crisis is just quality and adequacy, right? And kind of alluded to this, but how much of the housing in a community is substandard, or how much of it is deteriorating? A lot of this traces back to what are the incomes of the area. If you can't afford to keep it up, what do you do? Or another piece of this might be just the lack of modern amenities, or it may not comply with building codes or such. You end up with communities that have a lot of older homes needing major rehabilitation. So this is a third part of the housing crisis, just quality issues. And then finally, the last key dimension of the housing crisis is that there's a mismatch in the housing types that are available. The housing that we have doesn't match local needs. And the example there that I have on the screen would be that, okay, maybe a community has too many large single-family homes, but not enough rentals, or not enough senior housing, or not enough housing for workforce. And this is a common thing, particularly in rural Minnesota, is we just have certain types of housing, but not other types of housing. So those four things together are what we mean when we say the housing crisis. It's affordability, it's a shortage of supply, it's quality, not what it should be, or not adequate to a family's needs, or maybe it's a mismatch between the housing types that are available. So that's what we mean when we really say housing crisis. Where do we stand in Hutchinson? That's a fair question. As you can see on this table, we need a number of housing types here in Hutchinson. We have a group called Maxfield Research that does this for us, and they forecast, they look at population trends and so forth, and from that they're able to put together estimates as to what a community needs. So here on this table we're looking at the next 4 years here in Hutchinson, and you can see we need at least 105 market rate rentals. We need probably another 56 rentals that would be affordable or substandard for people with more limited incomes. Probably another 63 single-family homes, and then 55 or so townhomes and twin homes. So these are estimates. Like I said, they just kind of look at population trends. They look at what's on the market and what the market has done historically. So here in Hutchinson, basically, we need pretty much every type of housing there is. Luckily, we're seeing quite a bit of activity now in 2026, so maybe we're going to be okay, but we just don't know. Here on this graph, on this chart, it just kind of catalogs the apartment shortage that we're grappling with here in our community. And you can see that, okay, I have this red line here. That's what's considered a healthy vacancy rate, is at 5%, right? 5% vacancy rate is considered healthy. That allows for unit turnover, gives consumers a lot of options to choose from. That's a healthy rental market. And ever since 2013, you can see we've been below that, and sometimes very below that, in that, rental apartments, decent rental apartments, almost non-existent, very hard to find. And so on the rental side, it's been extraordinarily tight. We have kind of the same thing with respect to single-family homes. If you're shopping for a home in Hutchinson, there is just not a lot of options out there, and it's way below the numbers that we would historically see for the number of houses available. So the housing market is just uniformly very tight. So what's going on there? There's a couple contributing factors. And this one, it's sort of a vicious cycle, I guess. It's sort of a self-reinforcing event that just kind of makes things more and more difficult as we go along, is that there's sort of a lack of availability in the housing market. And really, I guess the way I could sum this up is that you can't buy what isn't for sale, right? If there's not an option, a person can't move. They can't slide over into a different house or something that may be more appropriate for them. And this is particularly troublesome in smaller markets like Hutchinson and rural Minnesota. So here on this chart here, this shows historical home ownership rates for people aged 67 to 85. So on the left side of the chart, that's the home ownership rate as a percentage. And then across the bottom, that's the age of the homeowner. And this is for the generation of people that was born in 1930 or before. And you can see, this is what one would normally expect, is that as people age, they end up selling their house. And so the home ownership rate will go down as they age. Now, this has changed quite a bit in recent years. So now we're going to overlay another cohort, another 10-year group of people born between 1931 and 1941. That's the blue line, that's this top line. And you can see that the home ownership rates are much higher for this group. And so what's happening is that we have people that are staying in their houses a lot longer. And this is not anybody's fault. Nobody's doing anything wrong or anything. What's happening is that there's no affordable options, right? You can't buy what's not for sale. And then people end up living in their houses longer than what they have done in years past. That keeps that house off of the market. And that kind of contributes to the situation that we're seeing. And this is a nationwide phenomenon. It's not just Hutchinson, not just Minnesota. This is the whole nation. So the number of people per household in 1940, it was 3.6 people per household was the average. Today that number is 2.6. And the takeaway there is that there's a lot of empty bedrooms out there. There's a lot of situations where people are, it's maybe one or two people that are living in a 3 or 4 bedroom house. And again, you can't buy what's not for sale. We have a combination of high housing costs, and it's like I said, it's sort of that vicious self-reinforcing cycle. If it's a limited supply, that drives up the cost. That's the way it works. So we have a combination of high housing costs, high interest rates, a lack of options. That translates into 1 or 2 people living in a 3 or 4 bedroom house, which means that house is unavailable for mom and dad and 2 kids that might actually need the 3 or 4 bedrooms. So again, you can't buy what's not available. If people don't have a choice, if it's not affordable, if there's physically no option, what do you do? But that's part of the housing crisis. That's why it's called a crisis. So where do we stand in McLeod County? So here is a pie chart that shows the percentage of owner-occupied houses by age. And this is from 2010. And you can see in the upper right there's 25%. Well, let me back up. For people aged 65 and up, 25% of that group, or let me back up again. The percentage of owner-occupied homes that are owned by people aged 65 or above is 25%. And then 19% that's owned by people aged 55 and 64. 23% of owner-occupied homes are owned by people ages 45 to 54, and 33% are owned by people under age of 45. So you can see how that's broken down. Now, we're going to move this forward by 10 years and look at how this pie chart changes. You can see, and I'm going to rock it back and forth a couple times, you can see that age 65 and above, that grew from 25%, it went to 30%. You look at the next age bracket, 55 to 64, that went from 19% to 22%. So you can see those 2 segments there increased pretty dramatically from 44% to 52% because people are staying in their homes longer. That's all part of the bigger situation that we're experiencing, is that more senior people are staying put. So here's nationwide. This shows the percentage of home ownership among young and old nationally. And the blue bars, that's people aged 35 or less. And you can see in 1996, that was 54%. And then it goes down, down, down. 2016, it's at 34%. Conversely, you look at the age group 65 and above, that was 63% own their own homes in 1996, and that goes up, up, up to 77%. So you can see these two trend lines. This is a real situation. Again, you know, lack of options. You can't buy what's not for sale. You have high housing costs, right? Limited supply, that pushes up the cost. And then you compound that with high interest rates. If you have no mortgage, you don't have to worry about mortgage payments and interest rates. Or we have a lot of people that were able to buy a home or refinance a home where interest rates were super low, 3.5% or 4% or 5%. You don't want to trade that low interest rate for a 6% interest rate. That doesn't make any sense. So we have all these things that contribute to these trends. You know, and that's one of the situations that we're in, is that, you know, we have an aging population. There's a real need for options for them that are affordable and appropriate, but they just don't exist. And so that's part of the challenge. Another piece of this, another contributing factor, is there's just kind of constraints in the construction of houses. There's higher, it just costs more to build these things. It costs more to build apartments. It costs more to build single family homes. That's compounded by labor shortages, and developers are making choices that make the situation more difficult. So here's a pie chart that just shows what's going into the cost of a new home. So overwhelmingly, 63%, that's labor and materials. Those are the big items on the list when you're building a new house. And then the orange slice there, 14%, that is the cost of the lot. And then the third slice is the financing cost, that's 8%. So that's getting your construction loan, paying interest on that, etc. So overwhelmingly, it's labor and materials that go into a house. So you've heard me say it on this show before, we have a real labor shortage, and we have a labor shortage in trades. And this is the carpenters, this is the electricians, the plumbers, and so forth that build your house or build the apartment. And the situation today is scary, because for every 5 of those people that are leaving the industry, there's only 2 coming in. So we've already got a very tight labor market in the trades, and it's just getting worse and worse and worse. And, you know, shortage of workers, that means the cost for these workers just goes up. That makes the house more expensive. That's part of the challenge. So we got to find a way to get more trades workers created somehow. Another contributing factor to this whole situation is that there are just fewer builders out there. We lost a lot of them during the housing crash of 2009. There were a lot of contractors out there, and their business went down because of the housing crash. And so we just don't have as many contractors today as what we used to have. And when there's fewer contractors, that means they're able to raise their prices. And then you combine that with a labor shortage. A lot of contractors can't even find the people they need to do this work. You put those 2 things together, and that really drives up the cost of building an apartment building or building a single family home or whatever. Then another piece of what's happening is that among the builders that are left, the contractors that are left, a lot of times they want to focus on bigger houses. And that's simply because there's more profit to be had. And for them, the choice is bigger house, more profit, small house, small profit. It's pretty easy to see which way they're going to go. So those are the things together there that kind of contribute to the housing crisis. Just to sum up then, when we talk about the housing crisis, I mean, there's a bunch of pieces to this, but it's high construction costs, and that's partly due to a shortage of labor. Material costs are higher. Then you combine that with fewer builders, and then builders focusing on bigger houses. So you put all those together, and that's a big chunk of what's driving up the cost of housing these days. So in this segment, we talked about, what is the housing crisis? What do we mean when we say that? We talked a little bit about where Hutchinson stands and where McLeod County is in this. And then we talked about some of the contributing factors. I wish I could talk about solutions and answers, but those we don't really have right now. We're just trying to work our way through this, and we'll just see how it plays out. So that's pretty much it for this episode. If you have any questions or you'd like to learn more or just chat, give me a call anytime. I'd be happy to chat with you. Give me a call at the number on the screen. And until next time, we'll say see you next time. Thanks for watching us on Hutchinson Economic Developments.